Okay, welcome to the July 19th meeting of the Citizen Oversight Board. We've got an interesting agenda today. We are joined by the newly appointed leaders of the Office of Neighborhood Safety. So we'll learn a lot about that. That was something that the community proposed, and there was some back and forth between city leadership and community about what form that would take. So it'll be interesting to hear what form that's going to take. Okay, we also have some board business that we need to get to, and it occurs to me that we cannot do elections until certain individuals have joined.
One of the nominees.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we could vote her in without her being here, but that seems a little bit out of protocol. But we'll go slowly then with the rest. So the first thing to let the board know is that City Council has introduced a resolution appointing Rufina Hernandez to the Citizen Oversight Board. She will be filling Nick Weber's position. He moved out of the city of Denver, and so was no longer eligible to be on the board, unfortunately, but we are excited to have Rufina. And I think her first meeting will be August 5th. Is that right, Daniel?
Our meeting is August 2nd. She'll be appointed August 5th. So it'll be August 16th. Yes, math. Okay. 16th meeting will be her first.
Perfect. And we are enthusiastic to get that seat filled. We still have one vacancy, which we are waiting on the mayor's office to fill. And so if you know anyone who is interested, please encourage them to apply. Next, if we could, if you had a chance to review the meeting minutes from our last board meeting, which was June 21st, it's been a while. If I can have a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Great. A second. Okay, I saw Alfredo do it on mute. Thank you. All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. The motion passes. All right. Perhaps with this group, we can do the first order of business, which is to elect a chair for the Citizen Oversight Board. Daniel, how long was my term? I forget. Is it annual?
They are annual elections. You have been serving as chair since former chair Al Gardner stepped down in, I believe it was just around the new year of 2022. So January or so, 2022.
Was it 2 or 21? Anyway.
I think maybe December 21 or January 22.
Okay, time flies. Anyway, we do this annually, and I would love to ask if anyone else would like the chair position. And if not, I think somebody else has to make a motion to do the election on the chair.
Well, absent any volunteers, and Julia, you've done a wonderful job, and I'm sure everybody else is deeply appreciative of your continued willingness to serve. Sure. You know, we've been going through a lot of transitions with new members and the like. So hopefully we can get some stability going and then get better succession planning than we've had. But absent anybody else who's willing and able to step up, I would proudly renominate you to be chair for another year.
Thank you.
I'll second. I think Julia's done a great job.
Thanks. All right, I think somebody else has to take a motion, but we don't have a vice chair on, so
I'll do it.
Yeah.
Julia will recuse herself from this vote, but there's a motion that has now been seconded to have her be reappointed as chair of the Citizen Oversight Board for another year. All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Julia, congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yay, thank you, Julia.
Hold on, I don't know what's happening with my video. Great. I see that we are joined now by Tymesha Watkins. So I think we can take some action on the vice chair role, and appreciate your confidence in me. I'm pleased to serve on an ongoing basis as the chair of the board. Okay, let's move to the vice chair. Would anyone like to put their name forward for the vice chair role? I think Tymesha stepped away.
Yeah, she looks like her video froze. So
Oh, there
we'll
she
give her
is.
a second.
All right. Hi, Tymesha, can you hear us? Okay, we can't hear you. You're on mute, but
I can hear you. I'm sorry.
okay, great. Welcome. I understand that you are interested in stepping into the role of the vice chair for the COB. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay. Thank you so much for your willingness to serve in that role. I am excited to work together in that capacity. I'd like to take a vote on Tymesha as the vice chair for the COB. May I have a motion?
I hereby nominate Tymesha to be the vice chair of the CLB for a 1-year period.
Thank you. I will second that. All in favor for Tymesha? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Congratulations, Tymesha.
Thank you.
We are thrilled. Okay, so with that, let's move into our guests who I see have joined. Dr. Sanders and Daelene. Oh, there you are. Okay, sorry, my screen just reorganized. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves and perhaps giving a little bit of an overview of the Office of Neighborhood Safety, a little bit of history, I think would be helpful. And then, you know, some goals and objectives of the office would be fantastic. Additionally, we've sent you questions in advance. So if you want to work through those questions efficiently, that would be great. If you could read the question out loud before you answer it, that would be fantastic for our the folks who hadn't seen those questions. With that, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Julia, and thanks everyone for having us this morning. My name is Ben Sanders. I serve as the Executive Director of the Office of Social Equity and Innovation, which is where the Office of Neighborhood Safety will live. We'll talk about that office here this morning. Another title you may hear related to me is the city's Chief Equity Officer. We'll talk a little bit about sort of how our equity work is related to the work of the Office of Neighborhood Safety. Happy to be joined this morning by our Deputy Director, Daelene Mix, who is very inconveniently being blocked out by our blurred background. So you may have to scoot up a little bit, Daelene. But we're really happy to be here this morning and to talk to you a little bit about the Office of Neighborhood Safety. So we'll just start kind of high level with
before you get going,
Yeah,
and thank you, Daelene. I'm excited for your floating head. And then if you wouldn't mind, is the Office of Equity in one of the public safety offices, or does it report to the mayor or somewhere else? If you could just clarify.
The Office of Social Equity and Innovation, OSEI is our acronym, is an independent agency. It is a mayor's office, but it is not in the mayor's office. So we are an independent agency that works with every agency that reports to the mayor and independent agencies that want to work with us on enhancing equity in their policies, their programs, and their budgets. And that has been the work that OSEI has done up to this point, where we're merging with the Office of Neighborhood Safety. That work will continue, but will kind of be turbocharged by some of the work we'll talk about this morning. Is that helpful? Awesome. So I'll start with sort of kind of where we are now. As I just mentioned, OSEI, which has been around since about 2018 to 2019, started under the Hancock administration. We've worked up to this point, again, with city agencies to develop equity programming. One of the ways, our sort of main entree into equity work at the city level, even before we started to build equity strategies with agencies, was we developed a training, actually started with the city in the role of us I was a part of a team of 3 people who developed a citywide race and social equity training. Happy to report that we've trained more than 11,000 city employees in that training at that point. Really use that training to sort of norm what it meant for the city to have a commitment to racial and social equity. Then we went internally and worked with departments across the city to develop what we call racial equity action plans, which are plans composed of various strategies that the intention of which is to, again, impact policies, programs, and the sort of shape of budgets that agencies produce from year to year. And we've been doing that for the first 5 years. Been really happy with the development of that programming, with some of the things we've been able to accomplish in partnership and collaboration with all of the city agencies with which we're fortunate enough to work. And now we're here to talk to you this morning about the kind of most recent sort of development and really significant expansion of our office. The OSEI that I just described to you that has existed since about 2019 had about 16 people on its staff. What we're doing in creating the Office of Neighborhood Safety is we're moving existing programming. I'm going to try to just intentionally talk slower than is normal here so that we can talk through some of the operational pieces that I think are super important. We're moving existing programming from the Department of Safety, which means it will no longer exist there. We'll talk about what those programs are in a second, to the Office of Social Equity and Innovation. That represents about 65 positions. And so our office is really kind of exploding from 16 to 80 people. So in total, it's about $11 million of resources that's a kind of budget neutral initially shift from the Department of Safety to the Office of Social Equity and Innovation, to create what we've been calling, and it may not be called this when it's all said and done, the Office of Neighborhood Safety. Traditionally, offices of neighborhood safety collaborate with partners in community to create solves for safety, for community vibrancy that don't center uniformed law enforcement. So it's about partnering with community, empowering community to work with the city and city resources in ways that create safety solves and really try to enhance sort of vibrancy, pro-social activity, all of the things that we know create not just more safe neighborhoods, but really more opportunity for communities. And we do that in ways by creating really innovative collaborations and by empowering community in ways that don't include their ability to enforce the law, right? And so it's really a collaborative model that leans really hard into the value that oftentimes it is the case that community knows what they need, and the city's role is really to sort of collaborate with them in creating solves. Now, in saying that, it's also been really important for us to clarify that this is not an anti-Department of Safety program in the sense that we are really working collaboratively with the Department of Safety. We've been working really collaboratively with Director Armando Soldate to create this office. I mean, the resources are literally shifting from the Department of Safety. And so we've had a bunch of conversations about what it means for us to, one, maintain the relationship we've had with the Department of Safety, where they're one agency among others whom we serve through the programming that has existed. But two, because we're shifting a bunch of programming that has lived in the Department of Safety, a lot of the really important integrative work in terms of staff and programming and revisioning, it's just really important to have that partnership so that we can pull not just from what we want to build, but also what these programs have been. So we've got a very collaborative relationship here with the Department of Safety, but it's really important to note that the Office of Social Equity and Innovation is independent from both the Mayor's Office and the Department of Safety as an agency. And with that, I want to talk just a little bit about some of the, before I get to the questions, just a little bit about some of the programming that's included in the shift that's creating the Office of Neighborhood Safety. So we've got 4 different components that we're moving over from the Department of Safety to create the Office of Neighborhood Safety. First is what has been known as the Office of Community Violence Solutions, OCVS, formerly known as Denver's Gang Reduction Initiative, or GRID. OCVS, which is headed by Dr. Nicole Monroe, who's an incredible community partner, incredible leader, is shifting over about 15 or 20
Yes.
people, 15 or 20 FTEs. Their focus there, which I'll let Daelene dig into in some more detail, is really on coming up with solutions to violence in communities that, again, used to center sort of on gangs, but now really centers on working with young people, creating preventative and pro-social opportunities, and also increasingly working with entire families, right? Because we know you can help young people or you can focus on parents, but the really sort of key is putting families in situations to be more successful and to live lives of vibrancy. So really happy that we're shifting OCVS over to our team. We're also shifting over what was formerly Public Safety's youth programs section. This is the largest section of what we're shifting over from the Department of Safety. That team is headed by Pat Hedrick. That represents about between 35 and 40 FTEs that are shifting over. The focus there is really in the title, really focus intentionally on our young people, some folks who have had some contact already with the criminal justice system, some folks who may sort of be teetering that way, and we want to try to catch them and intervene before they end up there. But we've got a really great opportunity to take the youth programs focus and really ground it, as is the case with all of these programs, in OSEI's commitment to racial and social equity. And we'll just kind of talk about how those things sort of back into each other here in a little bit. The third piece that we're moving over from the Department of Safety is the AID Center, the Assessment, Intake, and Diversion Center. That's been a really sort of promising, but we think the AID Center has a ton of potential that we're really excited to really sort of move forward and capitalize on through this sort of merger. We think by pulling the AID Center into sort of closer proximity with some other citywide programming, but also with the stuff that's already done in OCVS and youth programs, and really being intentional about that as a cooperative constellation, we can both elevate the sort of profile of the AID Center and also get really clear on what it does well. And so we're super excited about that. And then the fourth component that we're moving over from the Department of Safety, not the entire STAR program, but one position from the STAR program that's really critical to operations, namely the STAR 911 Operations Manager position. We were really happy to hire a super talented individual into that role maybe a month or so ago. She's really hit the ground running, brings a ton of experience in previous alternative response work. And so we're super excited about the ways that in the 911 operations manager position, which is really responsible for the policies and practices that kind of oversee and guide how STAR takes calls and dispatches the vans that provide the alternative response teams. And so we're really excited to have those four components really making up the Office of Neighborhood Safety. And then I'll kind of pause there and shift to the questions. And then I see your hand, Julia, please.
Yeah, thank you. So the rest of the STAR program reports to DDPHE, correct? And
That's correct.
Staying in place?
Yep.
Okay, so
For right now, none of that stuff is moving, but there's obviously, right, it's super important that we're collaborating really strong with both DDPHE and 911, right? Because much of the, I mean, that's so we're becoming a really important hinge. And I think with our focus on racial and social equity, we'll really be able to kind of push that program into its sort of next iteration of success.
Okay, so will that person's role be like a matrix reporting role? She is primarily a dispatch leader, right? And then I'm just thinking about like, where does she get her training from? Where does she get her career path?
That's a really good question. I'll let Daelene, who's been working really closely with the individual in that role, kind of speak to the kind of technical aspects of how she's positioned and the kind of nature of the role, so I don't step in it, please.
And part of it is still evolving, but the vision behind it was really to have a 911 operations individual who was putting together policies around dispatch, putting together training plans to make sure that we are trained in gender specific care and also culturally specific care. So a lot of those things don't quite exist now. They do in practice. So it's an opportunity for us to come in and codify it. There's also an opportunity for that individual to establish a multidisciplinary team because there are a lot of entities that are involved with STAR, particularly some of our community partners. And we see a real opportunity right now. The program is having success. There has been a lot of response to STAR calls, but there's opportunity to improve what that looks like. And we think that this position will help realize that.
So I think that's maybe a good enough sort of overview. I'd be happy to jump into the questions that you all were kind enough to send us ahead of time. Is this a good time for that? Oh, Liz, I'm sorry. I see your hand.
Sorry, having technical issues here. A question I had was, I understood that STAR was going to, and you may have answered this, that STAR was going to have its own dispatch group within dispatch. Is that started?
So there is a group of responders that are so there's STAR vans that respond to these calls that are designated as STAR. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean specifically a section within dispatch. So you have your DPD dispatch and then you have your STAR
Gotcha.
dispatch.
I think the word is
That-
channel, that she's the dispatch, a fourth dispatch channel, I think is the terminology.
I think that is sort of, maybe there's a difference in perception around that, but yes, that is sort of what we perceive this individual to be, because they are interacting directly with those that are on the STAR van who are employed, it's Well Power and then also Denver Health paramedics. And then there's also some interaction with those that this individual interacts with who are dispatched to those calls, with Servatio and some of the other community partners that they subcontract with. Does that
Okay.
answer the question?
Yes and no, Mike. A while back, and it could be that just there's a new reiteration of how this is going to evolve. We spoke with, who's the director of dispatch for safety?
Andrew Cameron?
I can't remember. Is that it, Daniel? Is that who it was?
Andrew,
Yeah.
Andrew Dameron?
Andrew Dameron.
Yeah. And there was, my understanding is they were in the process of physically hiring dispatchers that would only be answering STAR calls so that there wouldn't be this, wouldn't have DPD dispatchers handling STAR calls. So there would be individual identified STAR dispatchers, a STAR location. I think they had even gone as far as ordering desks and equipment. And I kind of haven't heard anything about that since then. So I'm asking if you don't know, we can discuss some other time.
Yeah, I think there's some historical catch up we need to do on this.
Yeah.
And also we're currently working with DDPHE and 911 on some peak workshops to establish roles and responsibilities. I think part of this is there's been some program management change over the 4 years that it's been in place, and maybe different approaches and different considerations. And then as it's a new program, things I think perpetually evolve, and so the needs are identified and different. So I don't have the specific answer for that, but we'll certainly work with Andrew to provide that information.
Yeah, we'll definitely dig into that, Liz, and get back to you with a good and clearer answer, both in terms of, I want to get clear on sort of maybe what you heard in earlier conversations and also sort of where things are now in relation to that, but we'll circle back.
Yeah, and just to clarify and identify, the issue was that community was concerned that STAR, there are requests for STAR that are exclusive of officers. People don't want officers showing up, they want STAR showing up.
Right.
But officers are on that line and may show up, just out of precaution or, to make sure everything's okay, whatever it may be, but that this would be separate from that, so that to avoid an officer showing up when they're not requested.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Just feeding into that, right? Originally, there is a separate number, but that obviously requires people to know that separate number, be able to call it, as opposed to 911, which is pretty universally understood. So, lots of challenges in the dispatch area that, the board has always been very interested in. Other things like the person has a knife, and so we automatically call DPD even if they're not a threat to others.
Right.
So things like that, I think, are really important to make sure that the office is getting right.
Absolutely. And for us, that's one of the reasons this 911 operations manager is so positioned, is so important. I mean, she's really positioned to really oversee a lot of that policy practice, who gets dispatched when and how, based on what information, with greater clarity. And so Liz, I want to do a better job at answering your question. So I promise we will circle back, but we do already have our eyes on some of these issues. And it's one of the reasons we're excited that this position is in our office. We think we can bring a lens to this work and some of the questions that have sort of surrounded response issues that other folks have tried on, but I just think we're sort of positioned with our sort of network of agencies and also the values that drive our work to hopefully do it better than it's been done.
Yeah, and Ben, there's Liz and Julia hit on this, but I mean, there's a huge training component to this, right?
Yep.
A process and procedure and training component, because you have folks in the 911 center. Look, they don't want to be responsible for for something that goes terribly wrong
That's
from
right.
a violence perspective. And they have just that star, and then something goes really badly south. So there's a lot of work here to make sure that that we have the policies and procedures in place to try to do this as best we can. There are always going to be issues. There'll always be something that goes haywire that you can't anticipate, but having the right process in place makes sense. So the fact that you all are getting into that is great.
Well, we think so too. So, keep us honest.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I will let you get to the rest of the questions that we asked you, but I have some very high level questions that I.
Please, yes.
Okay.
That's why we're here.
Like, I know we sent these in advance, but I have some other questions.
Yeah.
So, I think generally I'm enthusiastic for, non-policing activities to not live in the police department or public safety department in general. One of the things that's nice, at least for the COB, when they do, is that we generally have broad oversight over the effectiveness of those things. Obviously, if they move out, we do not. So can you talk a little bit about like your accountability metrics, what are the processes for accountability for your office? And,
Yeah, I love this
really
question.
interested in how we might influence there, considering that the areas that you oversee are really impactful to our safety environment.
Yeah, I love this question. One, as long as I'm in this role, OSEI will welcome all collaborative partnerships. So I'd love to be creative with you all about how we could connect and stay connected. One. Two, one of the first things that I thought about when Armando Saldate and I started having conversations about the possibility of making this program a reality was, what sort of community oversight can we set up? Because just as a little bit about me, I've spent a lot more time in my life on the community side of things than on the government side of things. And one of the things that I often experience is community is brought to the table late, or what feels late. And so we really wanted to be intentional, one, in stakeholdering really well early, in ways that said, not only do we want to know what you're working on and what information and what sort of data you have right now, we want to commit to staying connected to you in meaningful ways. Now, obviously, we can't stay connected with the nearly 120 different organizations that we've already had engagement with, but the Community Advisory Board, which is slated to be a 12 to 15 person board, appointed by a combination of mayor and city council, is going to be, to me, one of the most, if not the most important tool for keeping us honest around the type of work we're doing, how we're setting our priorities, how we're measuring our work, how we're assessing the success or lack thereof in different projects that we launch. And of course, what we want there, because we're only thinking 12 to 15 people, right? We can't have everyone, but I'm really trying to get a representative group of folks who can help us access everyone, sort of as close to it as we can, right? And to me, you create the best accountability metrics by being really sincere and inviting the right community members to the table to help hold you accountable for the metrics and the projects that you launch. And so the Community Advisory Board, which we've got a question on and we'll talk a little bit more on in a little bit, is a really important tool. And additionally, we've got a Racial Equity Council that already exists inside of OSEI that has sort of been an advisory group in relation to our existing work. We're looking forward to hopefully working to get that a council appointed as well, because my vision is that if the city of Denver is going to commit itself to racial and social equity work, we've got to find really meaningful, effective, impactful ways to collaborate with community, but also to hear from community in ways that are not just sort of shaping what we do, but keeping us from stepping in it when we might otherwise do it. And so the Community Advisory Board is super important. And would love to also stay connected with you all on the kind of best ways to hear from folks that we can't get to in that kind of 12 to 15 people kind of group. All right. Any other questions before I at last shift to the questions that you all sent us before? Well, how much time do we have, by the way, Julia? I want to be respectful of your agenda. Are we okay?
We have as much time as the board wants to engage in this topic, and I think the board's pretty excited to learn about what you're doing. So.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to talk about it. So we'll start with the first one. I'll just start with the question. Here it is. In mid-May, you gave a presentation to the City Council Safety Committee that included an 8 to 12-week plan for staff, program, and community integration. 9 weeks later, where do things stand in relation to that plan? Do you have an updated plan? We don't have an updated plan. We have an update on the plan that we've been executing though, which we're super excited about. So we've been focused really in kind of three, you can kind of you can think about it in 3 or 4 different areas. We've been focused on sort of staff integration. Obviously, we talked about the fact that we had 16 people in what OSEI was. We're moving 65 human beings from the Department of Safety, folks who have worked in the Department of Safety. They're used to the culture of the Department of Safety. They're used to sort of thinking and viewing their work through, to a certain extent, the Department of Safety's lenses, right? And to me, I don't think that we're just moving over folks who are going to continue to do the exact same thing. It's been really important that our staff integration include strategic processes that focus both on sort of critical review and constructive analysis of what folks have been doing, but also giving folks an opportunity to think about the fact that they're moving from the Department of Safety to an agency that has a very different mission and vision for its work, right? I mean, the vision of our work is to help create a city where race and other social identities no longer reliably predict your life outcomes, right? And we're very unapologetic about the way that we think that history and data should inform that work. We think that all of our projects should be data-driven, and we should also not pretend to not know the things that we know to be true about the past in this state and in our country. And that's not the same type of framing, I think, that is the explicit framing that drives the work in the Department of Safety. So we wanted to do staff integration, everything from allowing our leaders from the different kind of sides of what is now our one large office to meet each other, to get to know each other first as humans, but then to kind of delve into their work, the sort of things they've been successful at, the challenges there, because we have a sort of high level familiarity with what we've been up to in our respective worlds, but we've needed to really sort of think about how do we plug this stuff in. To me, it makes a ton of sense, right? We've had an agency that has worked with, again, every agency in the city on building existing programming. So we've got relationships. We understand what agencies do. We understand what some of their sticky points are. We understand what some of their aspirations are. Now we've got a community-facing arm for the city's equity work that we can immediately plug in, not just to our office, but to that citywide network of agencies that already exist. And so that's the kind of high-level thing that makes a ton of sense to us. And right now, what we're doing in the way of staff integration is giving the human beings an opportunity to really get to know each other in their work, so that what we're building is reflective of what they know. The other thing we're doing in that staff integration piece is we're bringing in a bunch of information that we've gathered from a bunch of stakeholding and community engagement that we've been doing over the past 8 or 9 weeks. And so we've engaged with close to 120 different community organizations. We've engaged with very intentionally with folks in the Black community, in the Latino community, in the Asian community. We've got meetings coming up with folks representing the Indigenous community, because to me, again, I wanted to be so early that folks were literally asking us, why are you asking us for our input so early? And it's because we usually come way too late. And so I'd rather be way too early and have folks at tables. And so we've had stakeholder meetings where we've invited folks and we've asked them, one, we've sort of told them what this is, and this in the same way, a little bit longer winded kind of similar to what we shared to you, except with a little bit more length, because we want folks really feel like we're inviting them to a process and not just to information. But then additionally, we followed up those initial meetings with a second set of meetings with those same groups, where we sat them at tables, we broke them out at tables according to the 4 different areas of the office that we just defined. And we just invited them to dig in, to ask questions, to make suggestions. We take all that information and bring that into our staff integration meetings as well that we're running with Peak here at the city, right? And so what we're aspiring to is something that includes the sort of voices and visions of the folks who've been doing the work in the city, the folks who've been doing the work in the community, and we're trying to have all of that inform our integrative process. And so we've been doing that in the way of operational stuff. We can talk about some of there's a bunch of sort of budget stuff and ordinance and bills and RFP stuff, because we're moving so many contracts and grants over with this programming. So we've been navigating a lot of that along with the Department of Finance and our partners at the Department of Safety and DDPHE, because there's a STAR component involved here. And a lot of that is just sort of about the right time to move the funds over, given sort of budget process calendars, right? I mean, it's a budget neutral shift. So there aren't sort of like, real technical questions that we're asking, but sort of timing in relation to the budget process has been super important. And then again, in addition to those, the stakeholdering that we're doing, we're working on setting up at least 4 different town hall meetings. We want to kind of hit all 4 quadrants of the city. And we just want to ask residents, not folks who necessarily represent organizations, but folks who just live in community, what's working when it comes to collaboration with the city in your neighborhood, and what's the stuff that we could do better on. And so the way we're sort of building this strategically is we're plugging it right into work that the mayor has already been doing around his Safe Denver goal. And so we think there's a really great opportunity to plug some of that Safe Denver work right into the work that we're doing here in the Office of Social Equity and Innovation through the Office of Neighborhood Safety. Okay, that's only one question. I'm Baptist, you all, so I can talk a lot. So you're gonna have to help me, Julia, because we'll be here all morning if you don't.
Yeah, we might
Please
be.
jump in.
I was gonna say preach. Okay, so a question I have for you while we're just at a pause, thinking about
Sure.
sort of the acculturation that happens when folks start in a department or in
Yeah.
a discipline, right? If I start as a police officer, sort of that frames
Yeah.
the way I act and the way I understand, you know, different scenarios I might come in contact with. You know, the collaboration and sort of integration is really interesting. Are you doing anything to sort of reset culture across these teams? Yeah.
Yeah, it's super important. It's like the main thing that keeps me up, because I know I've talked to enough of the folks who are coming over from DOS that I know there's a bunch of folks who are super excited about it. I also know I've heard explicitly from, you know, 2 or 3 folks are like, so wait, so we're not law enforcement anymore? What does that mean for you? So you can hear kind of both sides. I think by and large, folks are excited for the shift to an office focused on equity. But because I also know that there are other folks and other perspectives, it's really, really important to me that we do some norming around culture. One of the ways we want to do that, right? Good thing we've got content that has shaped a training on racial and social justice and what that means for city employees, right? I think a ton of what we can do and what I'm committed to doing is really on the sort of individual unit level on the teams that we moved over, really taking some of that content and shaping some of the kind of operational and program conversations we're having kind of through an equity lens. It's really easy for most people in the room, but I definitely can feel and know that there's a real need to be really explicit about that culture shift and what it means, right? I've said in front of kind of into any microphone that folks have put into my face that yes, we're shifting existing programming, but I have every intention of really making sure that that programming is committed and shaped in ways that is expanding equity. And so where that means rebranding and renaming and rethinking about how stuff is shaped and how teams are shaped, we're going to do all of that because we're excited to be pulling this work into an office that's committed first and foremost to making Denver more equitable. So we've got a lot of culture work there to do. Alfredo, yes, please.
Hi, Ben and Darlene. I'm one of the newest members on the board. I've also gotten to participate in some of the training that y'all have done while sitting on a separate board. And as we're talking about, I guess, the structural changes and the acculturation piece in particular, I think the structural component is really important of not having some of these programs live within policing. But I guess one of my questions being more around the culture and the reception and the buy-in. You know, on the one hand, when I've been sitting through some of these trainings, I'm like, you know, a Mexican American born and raised on the West Side.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, you're preaching to the choir. And then on the other side, thinking of, well, folk are just like their eyes are glazing over and they're just like, all right, here we go again with more wokeness. So I'm wondering how are you approaching these conversations in which the history is so important and the equity so vital to the future of the city without causing more division or more polarization? And I guess how are you measuring buy-in across the agency in a way that doesn't just keep pulling us further and further apart?
That is a great question. So I think one, we've got just to right to the metrics question, we've got a survey that all participants in RSJ Academy take, right? So we've got that level of data. Was this helpful to you? Do you have a better understanding of what Denver's equity programming is and how you can participate in it, right? I'll say that if on the sort of, if let's say we've got a poll and there's lots of different polls, but if on one end of the poll, we've got folks who are like, I sort of like know this, like, why am I in this training? I know that there are some of those folks. And on the other end, you've got folks who are like, this is like more wokeness. Like, why do I have to do this when I'm at work, right? I think there's a really thick middle of folks who are some combination of really excited and grateful for this work and like almost like asking like, wait, really? Are you actually inviting us to do this work? And so we really try to focus on that really critical middle. And what we do with the folks who are sort of at either end of the pole, those are the folks that tend to actually reach out to us individually. Those folks tend to like, I don't understand why I have to take this training. Like, what's the shape? Like, I just kind of feel right. And then we lean into sort of relationship building, because no one in this office thinks that the solve for racial and social inequities is a training. But we do know that in a city as large as we are, right, there's something to be said for norming. And what we've seen from the data that we've got from training is folks understand this to be a really important shift for working at the city and county of Denver. It means they can ask different questions in their meetings, right, and not have to think 3 times about whether or not they can ask it. I think, and I'll be quiet, one of the most formative trainings we did for RSJ was we went out to one of the brownest teams in the city, which just so happens to be the solid waste management team at Dottie, because I was working at Dottie at the time and committed to trying to make sure that these folks who were the literal boots on the ground, right? So anyway, we had to figure out a way to get this training to these folks. And the way we did that is we went out to their camp meetings at 6:30 in the morning. And these were some of the best trainings we had because 1, we tweaked it a little bit to make sure 1, it could fit into time, and 2, that it was speaking directly to the types of work that they were doing. So we were able to use solid waste management maps. We were able to engage maps in the city and data that was really important to them. And when I tell you that room, it took us 2 different camp meetings to do that. When I tell you we got there on the first day and folks were sort of like, what is this? Who are these folks who want to talk to us? But when we left that room, after the second and final session, almost everyone in that room was thrilled that they had taken that training, excited to lean into the work, and grateful for the fact that they felt seen and heard in terms of their perspective as employees, right? And so that's a lot of the value that we get from the training, right? For folks who already understand how difficult the system is, how messed up the system is, you're not going to learn a ton of new information, though we do help you learn some new information because we've done a lot of good research sort of nationally and locally on some of the metrics we use. But most important is normalizing the conversation so that when we get into agencies, staff they're not confused about what we've been up to.
No, that's really helpful, Ben. And I look forward to seeing the impact that y'all have across the city, because I also understand that these conversations take time. Being able to move the needle takes time. Social change takes time. You want to see positive change, you're going to need at least 10 years to see it really, really take root. So thank you for the work that y'all are doing. And I'm excited to see the outcomes that it has down the road.
Thank you for your incisive question, man. Okay, I'm going to jump to question 2. And, sorry, Stefan, I see your hand before I get to Stefan's question 2. You're on mute, my friend.
I certainly am. And that's not usually the case. Anyway, I want to follow up on Alfredo's excellent question. I also, yes, I see the need to try to overcome the polarization that has engulfed this country, this city, everything. But in terms of making positive change, not only will you need to change sort of the culture and the mindset of the folks that are joining your group, but it's also going to be important over time to work very collaboratively with the Department of Public Safety.
Absolutely.
Really, look, it is great that you're focusing on equity and resources that don't need a law enforcement response, and people want that. But we also have to, in order to really make change, we also have to all work together with the Department of Public Safety to make sure that they're included in the conversation too, and their responses are reflective of the type of work that you're trying to do. So I think, listen, that's a huge lift too. Look at everything you're describing, which is, you got an incredible amount of work just to get your Office of Neighborhood Safety off the ground, and the 4 entities that you've integrated, and bringing Daelene over and trying to, oh my God, that's monumental in terms of just getting that accomplished. But then in terms of a next stage, working with the Department of Public Safety to say, this is what we've learned from the community. This is how we would like to incorporate you in what we're doing, so we're all working as one big team. Anyway, that's my speech, but what's your view on all that?
I agree with you wholeheartedly, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
think, you know, it's important for a lot of our partners to know that we really are moving these resources out of the Department of Safety, but it's important for me, as an appointee, and also as someone who has been in community and has very strong feelings about the role of law enforcement in community, that we have a very strong relationship with the Department of Safety that is sort of mutually transformative and informative, right? I mean, I think a large part of this partnership is the Department of Safety sort of stepping into and having the courage to say, hey, some of this programming could probably do better in other places. That doesn't mean we can't work with those folks, right? I mean, some of the other stuff that we're doing is we're working very closely with the police department and some of the P&I focused work that the city is trying to do, where we're trying to focus and collaborating with community, with existing organizations and communities to create safety solves that, yes, can include law enforcement and oftentimes do, but also includes Dottie and the Office of Children Affairs and Denver Human Services in ways where we can start to think about this collaborative way, this sort of collaborative way of being that we so desperately need in lots of ways right now, and really practical ways that are directly responsive to community needs that we've heard from in citywide meetings that we've been doing for the past few months. And so there's a ton of alignment, but in short, I couldn't agree with you more. Collaboration with the Department of Safety is absolutely critical. And I'm excited because we got great leaders in the Department of Safety in Denver who are actually open to learning from some of the work that we're doing as well. And I've seen some of that in ways that I'm learning to trust increasingly. So I'm excited about the collaborative piece of this.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, the last thing we need is an us versus them mentality. All that does is
Agreed.
exacerbate the level of polarization.
Agreed.
So, and there are
Agreed.
plenty of people in this city who have a view. Look, I went to a couple of the mayoral forums where people run. I mean, there are a lot of people in this city that feel very strongly about that law enforcement hasn't done its job in terms of cracking down on certain types of crime, auto theft and things of that nature. And people are demanding more there. So the integration is absolutely critical.
Absolutely. Thank you for the great question. And so we're totally committed to that. And it is a heavy lift. You know, I like to consider myself a descendant of people of heavy lifts, right? Who know that you lift best through collaboration, right? So, but it is heavy. And I appreciate Alfredo looking down the long road for us, because that's exactly how I think about this, right? You don't create this stuff through shifting programming overnight, right? This is relationship building. This is trust repair. This is all of the things that you all are already so familiar with. Okay, now seriously, question 2. Does the ONS have a mission statement? The quick answer there is that we're working right now with Peak to develop a mission statement for the Office of Neighborhood Safety. It's really important that sort of fit under the kind of existing mission statement of the Office of Social Equity and Innovation, which is to foster an equitable and inclusive city by dismantling systemic barriers and creating targeting solutions for historically marginalized communities. So that's our mission, right? We want to work with community to create targeted responses to issues that we know have already existed. And then our vision is that we help to create a city where racial and other social identities no longer predict life outcomes. So ONS is working on a statement right now through peak sessions that Daelene is working her butt off in to craft mission and vision statements for that team. So that's number 2. Number 3, please feel free to jump in if you have any questions about any of this. I'm just trying to be mindful of our time. What kinds of authorities and responsibilities will the Community Advisory Board have? I love this question. We're working right now with the mayor's office to establish all of the parameters, but I mean, it's kind of in the title, it's primarily an advisory board. To me, what that means is we need folks who are connected well enough in community to understand sort of local neighborhood level issues from the community perspective. We need to communicate it to us in that way. We've got a ton of city data. We've also got a ton of community collaboration, but we need folks on the Community Advisory Board who can advise and shape our work using the perspective that they have really rooted and based in community, right? I mean, that has to be the thing, and that has to feel real and sincere to community. Number 3, will the board have its own mission statement? The board will not have its own mission statement. We envision that board working kind of under the mission statement of the Office of Neighborhood Safety that Daelene is working on developing, and the larger mission statement of the Office of Social Equity and Innovation. Number 5, do any ONS personnel have the ability to issue citations? No, they do not. There's no policing involved in any of the Office of Neighborhood Safety staff. This is really about collaboration and the ability to sort of learn what exists in community to create solves for things that are there. But there's no citation issuing power in any ONS personnel. Number 6, how will responsibilities be divided between Dr. Sanders and Ms. Mix? So I work as the Chief Equity Officer and the Executive Director, so I do a lot of the kind of public-facing, high-level strategy stuff. I am super excited to be a part, for example, of a collective of Chief Equity Officers from across the country that gets convened by Harvard's Bloomberg City once or twice a year, and we have a quarterly meeting as well. I'm super excited to be able to plug in with those folks, learn best practices about what's happening across the country, share some of the really innovative stuff that we're working on. But then also to sort of, connect our work in other ways. I kind of think of my role as carrying, connecting, and cultivating the work of our office. That's my work. And I have to do that primarily with kind of community partners, with our stakeholders, again, with national partners. We're really excited to be developing relationships with academic institutions. We think that publishing on some of the findings of our work is super important, both in terms of sort of clarifying the value of equity work and also clarifying it in ways that I think can create some bridges across some of the really nasty divides that we know shape too much of what we live inside of. So I'm focusing primarily externally in terms of everything internal, operational, related to the Office of Neighborhood Safety or whatever we might end up calling that fantastic team. Daelene is going to be the expert, and I'm really entrusting and empowering her with all of the details related to our budget, related to our personnel. I mean, we meet at least once a week, usually 2 or 3 times a week. And the 4th time I call her randomly because I forgot to talk to her about something in one of the meetings we had. But we stay really well connected about the operational piece. But I really entrust and empower Daelene over the operational components, the internal components of the Office of Neighborhood Safety. And I do a lot of the kind of public facing stuff that connects our work with partners in the city, across the state, across the country, so on and so forth. Did I leave anything else out about your role?
I think that's great. And part of where we have another deputy director in the office too. So there are 2 of us that are teaming up. And so we're also collaborating really closely. I do have somewhat of a Department of Safety lens. A lot of my work in the Department of Safety was around some of these alternative response and innovative ways of looking at the business and our service delivery model. But I have the benefit of having someone else, another partner who has a different lens as well, that's really focused around equity also. So really excited to be a part of the team, but just really following the vision that Dr. Sanders will establish for us all.
And I do not make her call me Dr. Sanders or Dr. Ben or anything. In fact, I insist against it, and it happens all just so y'all know. Okay, number 7, assuming the ONS, wait, did I skip one? No, I didn't.
Nope.
Number 7, assuming the ONS receives additional funding in the 2025 budget, how and where do you envision the ONS expanding its work? It's still really early in the 2025 budget process. We're still pulling together our presentation that's going to go before the CFO. And also, one of the things OSCI does is we sit in all of the CFO meetings of other agencies, so we can kind of see their proposals, flag any kind of equity concerns we might have. We're also involved in sort of leading up to those presentations. So the one thing we can say about our work is that we're definitely going to center neighborhood vitality. We're going to center equity. We're going to center those programs. But again, we've got a lot of sort of internal staff and program integration work literally going on this week that will sort of help clarify how we're going to shape those programs. And one of my big aims is that when we think about what our programs are sort of aimed at doing and what our sort of grant sort of trajectory and sort of hopes and aims will be over the coming years, I just want to make sure that we're doing that in ways that are informed by work that's already happening on the ground. And so that's probably about as clear as we can be on budget stuff right now. We want to expand a bunch of the work that we're doing. We've heard a lot about the need to make sure that anytime we're focusing on youth, we're also focusing on families. And anytime we're focusing on people experiencing mental health, substance misuse issues, we're also focusing on their kids. And so we're finding a lot of, and I'm grateful for this, right? We're hearing in community, right, that we've really got to focus on the family as an entity, because I think that gets us closer to focus on the neighborhood and the community as an entity. So we'll be really excited about that. Okay, number 8. Did I miss anything on that one?
That's perfect.
Okay, number 8. Will ONS employees continue to work from their previous DOS desk and locations, or will there be a new physical ONS space? I could speak to this one on real estate, but you've been working more closely to which one?
Yes. So we've been working really closely with real estate to identify a space that can house us all. Of course, we want to be located together. We think that will really support the integration and the cultural changes that we're leading. But right now we are also navigating. OSCI operates out of the web building, and there's a huge renovation happening right now that some of you may be aware of in the web building. And so space in this area where our, a lot of the courts are that we still need to be in proximity to because of the youth diversion component of our work, and also the AIDS Center. real estate's very limited right now. And so there are rotating schedules of people moving out of the web building and going into other locations that have been leased. And so we're in the middle of that, navigating as well. But we've had several meetings with real estate. In fact, we had one yesterday. We're brainstorming some new ideas. So it's going to take a little bit of time when you factor in the web renovations. But yes, that is our ultimate goal, is to find the right space and to fully integrate through a location that is new to the folks who are coming over from the Department of Safety, or who have already transitioned from the Department of Safety.
Yeah, the beautifully inconvenient thing that happened here is the city was restacking everyone right as we were merging this new office. And so the real estate folks were thinking that they were restacking OSEI with 16 people, and now we have 80 people. So we've, been pressing them for a lot of help to find the right space, because to us, you can't create the culture you want if you got teams working in different spaces, right? And so right now we're doing that by intentionally bringing them into the same space for regular meetings. And we're in ongoing meetings about how quickly we can get all of the staff, all the team into the same space. Stefan, I see your hand, my friend.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So following up on that subject, and somebody who is very familiar with it in terms of working in and trying to lead an office through the pandemic and post-pandemic and the hybrid business model. And also somebody who is a victim of the incredible amount of construction that is going on in the downtown Denver, where you can't go from one street to another without things stopped. But I'll set that aside. In terms of, it's so important that you're talking about, Daelene, you were just talking about space and the like, in terms of the level of collaboration, teamwork, mentorship, all of that is just so critical to any business, but certainly in the work that you're doing. How are you going to, and I don't know what the city's policy is on hybrid, but in terms of getting people to work in an environment where they can engage in that level of collaboration, and you do want to maintain the flexibility, of course, people need to be out in the community and doing things, but to me, and it sounds old school, to me, you do get the most accomplished when you're working together face to face, particularly in the type of work that you're doing. Yep. What's the plan once you figure out the space thing, which is frustrating and challenging, I'm sure, of bringing people together so that you can work together in an in-person environment and really improve your effectiveness and your efficiency?
I love this question.
Yeah. Yes. So that is an outcome that we're looking forward to. And so we are building towards that. And we're also building, what does that look in the interim, right? So we are establishing like a shared drives that we are working with, where we've established a Teams page that'll be in all staff, where it's all OSEI. We're going to have consistent meetings. There's going to be one that is in person. We're in Republic Plaza right now, and there's this amazing resource center down on the first floor where you can hold large meetings. And they also have conference rooms that will fit our staff. So we're already looking at that. We're looking at what are those like social events too, where there's not a business purpose. We're just getting together. We're getting to know each other. There's also going to be training that we're going to be doing together as well. And one of them, is it okay if I name it? Yeah. It is Outward Mindset. And really, it's a great training. I won't get too laborious around explaining it, but basically it's focusing outward instead of inward in how you approach public service work. And so that is part of that cultural shift as well. We're doing that with folks from both sides of the shop, although I don't like to refer to that way because we really are working towards that one, group. But that is part of the stuff that we're doing as we build towards, once we get to the shared location, what does that look like? By that time, we may be able to really create more functional spaces of alignment across the 4 different agencies to where we can incorporate that into the location, and then just have better brainstorming and opportunity for people to find alignment in each other's work and how to leverage each other's resources and partnerships as well. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, I think so. You don't need to call me sir. It's all good.
She does that to me too.
I
It's like, but you were talking about the sort of like Department of Safety thing. I was like, Daelene, you have to stop calling me sir. but okay, Alfredo, I see you. I'm gonna come to you. I wanted to, Stefan, if I could just really quickly on that question. Outward Mindset, which is a training that I just love for teams. It's really sort of focused on kind of like social and emotional intelligence and really encouraging that, really first and foremost among sort of leadership teams, right? It's just this really great way, especially for the work that we do of encouraging folks on a really regular basis to check in with themselves so that they can be really clear about how they're approaching work, which is so important with all the collaboration and sort of wire crossing that we do. So be happy to talk more about that, but we've got a bunch of our leaders, our directors already who've gone through it. And it also creates a kind of shared language for us to talk about sticky issues, whether that be sort of operational stuff, staff stuff, how are we going to get this budget issue done, right? So it's a really important tool in terms of some of the culture creation we're trying to do. So be happy to talk with you all about that in coming months too. Alfredo, thank you for your patience, my friend.
For sure. And it's an unrelated question that can also wait until the end.
Okay.
But it's something that came to mind around the trainings and culture shift that we're
Yeah.
talking about. One of the biggest things that to me stood out during my ride along with DPD was the huge culture shift that's happening on the ground with newcomers.
Yes.
And how they're interfacing with the legal system.
Right.
And I'm wondering if there's any trainings or if this even falls within your purview, that there needs to be a training for newcomers and the public as a whole, I would argue, around the role of police and civil versus criminal matters, where there was a lot of frustration that I was experiencing from newcomers that they wanted the police to do more and to help them and to get involved. But DPD was saying, yo, like, this is civil. We can't do anything here.
Yeah.
So that to me is also one of the biggest culture shifts that the city's gonna have to get ahead of. And
Huge.
wondering what are what are y'all thinking? What are y'all planning to do around that issue?
Yeah. So for us, we come at an issue like that through the lens of our focus on neighborhoods and communities. The city has, you may already know, and I think it's an office of, is it the newcomer program that exists in DHS. That's what it is. That's headed by Sarah Plastino, I think her name is. So Sarah is really working on sort of shaping and spearheading how is Denver as a sanctuary city, how is Denver functioning as a partner for newcomers? How are we coming up with better, more creative, more affordable ways to humanize folks and give them quick access to work? What are the best ways to pressure using the power that we can in collaboration with the state, the federal government, to be proactive on things so that work is sort of something that's more readily available? But in terms of the sort of humanizing culture piece, our way into that would be, one, through the work that we're already doing with departments. So through our work that already exists with DHS, we're plugged into Sarah Plastino's work and how that work is being shaped on an ongoing basis. And then the other way, through our ongoing work with the Department of Safety and more specifically with DPD, we're aware of some of the ways that we're aware of the questions that they're asking about how to be responsive in more equitable ways. And we're trying to help shape some of those practices and policies, right? But to a point you made earlier, this is a thing that we're racing to get out in front of. And it's also going to take us some time to really sort of norm what our training looks like, to really sort of no one this time last year knew that this was going to be a question we needed to find answers to, right? So I don't want to blow smoke, but I will say that I know that Sarah's working super hard and we're working super hard with DHS and in partnership with DOS and on a couple of different levels to make sure that we're increasingly not just good, but like learning from the efforts that we're making. I think even some of the newcomer program that was stood up a few months back was largely based on learnings and lessons and hard lessons that we learned in trying to shelter folks earlier in the year, right? And so some of the things we're doing now with long-term housing instead of hotels and giving folks access to grocery cards instead of what we were doing before, which literally saves the city money, and I think puts folks on far from a perfect track, but a far better track to sort of job training and stuff like that. So we're learning as we go, man, and our role will be to continue to work with those partners and then also use our sort of neighborhood lens to pay attention to the areas in the city where we know there are higher concentrations of newcomers, i.e. higher needs for service. So we'll focus, as we always have, on sort of highest areas of needs, and then we'll partner with the agencies who are there to sort of kind of create solves. So some of this is related to some of our P&I work too, right? I mean, the places that newcomers are coming up are ending up oftentimes overlap with some of the areas that have higher levels of violent gun crime, for example, right? And so there's a lot of overlap in ongoing city programming, but we'll be partnering with agencies and we'll be using our own neighborhood lens to plug into that work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, 9 and 10, and then I'll stop talking, I promise. What has been the community's response to the creation of the Office of Neighborhood Safety? We have been really happy that we've received an overwhelmingly positive response to the Office of Neighborhood Safety, as is the case with any good idea. You'll have folks who want to know, why is it shaped that way? What is that actually about? But again, we've engaged more than 100, close to 120 community groups, some of which include Denver and Rocky Mountain chapters of the NAACP, Mount Bello Organizing Committee, Servicios de la Raza, Chic in Denver. We've engaged the Criminal Justice Reform Coalition. I mean, we've got a very long list of folks that we've engaged, and not all of them have come to our stakeholder meetings, but we continue to invite them, and we hope that as folks see how serious we are about stakeholdering, that those groups continue to grow. And so let's see. Yeah, so overwhelmingly positive response. And then question 10, how would the ONS integrate or interact with the community initiative led by the Denver Task Force to reimagine policing and public safety? So one of the things that we've done is we made really early reference to that I think was a great study that they had commissioned, that the Reimagining Police Task Force had commissioned, and then up with like 112 really solid recommendations. Obviously, we won't be able to implement all 112 of those, but that study is one of the kind of main studies, along with, there was a feasibility study done about an ONS for the city and county of Denver, and I've connected with Dr. Sheila Huss on that. We've looked at a couple of other studies done on offices of neighborhood safety just kind of around the country. And so we've invited the Reimagining Police Task Force to, I think, all of our stakeholdering meetings. I think we've had them at the first two meetings that we've had with the Black community. And we've been open to working with them, and we'll remain open to working with all partners. We know they're doing some really great stuff. They had a film screening last week that I ended up not being able to make, but that I heard went really well. And we know that they're committed to a sort of community-rooted approach to the Office of Neighborhood Safety. I also know that, we don't see eye to eye on everything philosophically, right? But I don't think we have to agree on everything to collaborate. And so I've said from day one, and we'll continue to say, that we're super excited to work with the Reimagining Police Task Force, and however we can to sort of make this work at the city pop as much as we can. But that's also true about all the other groups that we've engaged. And that's 10. Julia, sorry, it's 11.
Just a follow-up question on that. Yeah, I'm gonna try and say the quiet part out loud without really getting myself in trouble. Okay, so there were some perhaps political promises made to create the Office of Neighborhood Safety, and that got slowed down. And so community then said, well, we really want this, and we can find a way to do it without perhaps the city's help. So there was some movement to create this using community groups outside of city infrastructure. And then, sort of more recently, the mayor's administration said, we got it, and then has sort of created this in your office. So that last question is really about this, that there was energy and movement and sort of catalyzation of this thing outside of bureaucracy, and now there is the creation of this thing inside bureaucracy. So can you just talk about, like, will these things be merged? Are you taking the idea, so less about like what's the Reimagining Task Force perspective on policing, but more about the same sort of stakeholder groups were trying to form their own neighborhood safety?
Yeah, so this is my first COB meeting, so I'm just going to respond how I typically respond, which is honestly, and I'm just going to say that, so I'm familiar with that sort of version of how this office kind of came together. It's not at all sort of accurate in relation to sort of my experience with it. In my experience, we met with the really important leaders of that really important work really early on. And when I say we, I mean Director Armando Saldate and I sat down with Dr. Calderon and Dr. Davis, and we said, hey, we heard, because this was me being brought into the work, we heard that you all were really excited about the prospect of the city creating an Office of Neighborhood Safety, as long as it didn't live in the mayor's office and it didn't live in the Department of Safety. We think we've made really good progress on a solve for that by taking these existing resources and doing basically what I explained to you all at the top of this call. That at that point, during that first meeting, and this was my first time sitting down with the two of them in that capacity, what I heard from them was, the mayor has taken too long on this. And we hear that you all are making progress and you think that something could come out of this. But because the mayor's office has taken so long, we're now committed to moving forward and creating an Office of Neighborhood Safety that's grounded not in the city, which was my understanding part of the original sort of request and is also reflected in some of the studies that we've looked at, including the feasibility study, to now sort of being in the place of like, okay, we're just going to do our own sort of community-centered Office of Neighborhood Safety. To which my original response was, I'm really sorry that like that's where you sort of feel like things sort of need to go, but how can we partner? Now, we have not had ongoing conversations about sort of how these two would sort of be organically connected to each other. Frankly, I think that there are some sort of differences of opinion about sort of how this office should work in relationship to the Department of Safety, in relationship to community, and sort of all that community entails. One of the sort of gifts, privileges, burdens, responsibilities that I think we have at the city is we sort of naturally have a huge canopy of people. And so when I name that 120 groups, that includes the Reimagining Police Task Force, I pulled them into that larger group because I value them as a part of that larger group. And so we want to work as a part of that larger group. And where there are really natural connections between their work and our work, I would always lean into those. So I've really regretted some of the kind of adversarial ways that our work has gotten framed sort of publicly, because I just don't think about it that way. But I've remained open to working with any group that can help us move this work forward and get resources to the folks who need them most. And I know they're committed to that.
Cool, thanks. Other questions from the board on this topic? I guess I should have asked you how much time do you have, because I know
I think I'm good. I think
Okay.
this was largely my Friday morning. I've got like a noon call, but I wanted to make sure we had as much time. Again, sort of my leadership sort of principles are all around communication, transparent communication, collaboration, and making sure that we're all sort of on the same page in everything that we do. I try to lean into that in this office. I want to lean into that in this relationship. I've never met with you all. This is my first time getting to hang out with you all. I look forward to having opportunities to stay connected. I value the work that you all do for the city, for the residents. And so anything that that we can do to be a resource, please count us as that. As you hear things that you want or need confirmed, please don't hesitate to reach out. And we're really excited about this work. It is a big lift. We're going to need as much help as we can get from the task force, from as many partners as we can get. And we're excited about hopefully creating a model for an Office of Neighborhood Safety that inspires a bunch of cities across the country that I think need offices like this, that this is possible, that it can happen, that it can be a tool for bringing folks together in a time where we're so, I think, destructively divided. And so we're excited about the work and look forward to staying connected.
That's great. I just really appreciate hearing sort of your vision. To me, this feels really meaty in a robust sort of way. And I'm pleased to hear that. I'll also say, just this week, like there was a lot of social change on the word equity. It is under attack, I would say. And so, often in this moment, it's something that is cut or eliminated as so no longer like mission critical. And I'll just say like these functions that have moved over are things that the COB is keenly interested in. And so I'll just say this out loud, but if you're receiving pressure to cut your budget, I think we'd like to know. And we'd
Absolutely.
like to understand that if there's, sort of negative pressures on equity in terms of its relationship to policing and safety, that's like part of our mission. So
I appreciate that.
can collaborate with you on that is important. When the city comes for budget cuts, often the safety departments are able to absorb those in salary savings. And so, now that you've got this sort of like bigger group, right? It's an organization with a budget that's real, and it's not sort of like this little dinky program that, if a cut comes, it's not going to be real. So I think we just want to understand that. And we want to make sure that if this vision for this robust thing is set, that the thing gets time to develop and, materialize in real life. So I know at least that's, having worked in government myself, I understand sort of like what gets cut first. And oftentimes, these things are seen as not core to the mission, even though this is sort of like exactly the mission. So I just really appreciate your commitment to that. Is there any other commentary, questions, discussion from the board? Okay, thank you all. And I think at least I would love to sort of have some sort of frequency of meetings with you all to understand. I don't know if other board members feel that way. Okay, I'm seeing some head nods. So if it's all right with you, I think we'll work to sort of have you be a regular scheduled guest in our
Great.
meeting. Okay.
I think we'd love that. Thank you all so much for the time this morning. I live in the world of visions. I was a seminary professor for 6 years before I stumbled into this career in the city. And so, you know, I'm super passionate about the stuff that can come out of vision. And thank you all for the work you do to keep us honest on it. And we'd love to be regular guests.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Ben.
y'all.
Thank you, Daelene.
Take good care.
Thank you.
Ben,
Take
enjoy-
care.
And I know we are a bit into what was planned to be our executive session, but are there any, Monitor Castle, if you are there, are there any topics that you would like to cover in the public forum?
I do have one topic
Great.
regarding communications with community on cases. Cool. The Office of the Independent Monitor communicates with members of the community who file complaints, and we advise them that we have reviewed the complaints. And the method that we have to do that is usually a letter. And to kind of start the conversation, OIM does not impose discipline. That is something that comes from the particular law enforcement agencies, or we have waited till the discipline complaint excuse me for 1 second.
Liz, you're kind of going in and out.
Um,
Yeah, it seems like your internet
I'll
connection.
do my best. I hope I'm not having a glitch. Can you hear me?
You're pretty glitchy, but we can hear you
If I
now.
go out.
You could consider maybe cutting your video and seeing if that helps.
Maybe I'll turn off. Yeah. Let me do that. Hopefully that helps.
That sounds better. Thank you.
Cool. And if you could also start over, please.
So in the past, we waited, the department accepts complaints by the community regarding law enforcement, so police and sheriffs. And I'm so sorry, I have barky dogs as well. And our office reviews those complaints. We do not impose discipline. So in the past, what we would do is we would wait until the department was done with the case and it was closed. They would generate a letter indicating what their decision had been on a case. They would then forward that letter to us, and we would send it to the community member with a letter from us saying we've had an opportunity to review the matter. Sorry. Sorry.
We
We've
can't
had
actually hear the dogs, Liz, so don't worry about that. It's not
Okay.
coming through on our end.
We've had an opportunity to review the case. We review all cases that are filed as complaints. And here is the letter from the department. And here's our letter to you indicating that we did have an opportunity to review the case. And here attached is their decision. Unfortunately, that has led to a lot of confusions in terms of community thinking that we have a part that we make the decision. because they're getting both letters at the same time. So we get a lot of pushback from the community feeling like it was our decision. It's not our decision. Again, we don't impose discipline. This is the decision of the department. So for that reason, we have changed our procedure, whereas now the particular department or the Department of Safety will send their own independent letters to the community member. We will then, once we see that the matter is closed, send our letter to the community member indicating that we did review the case, and that it's important for us to continue to advise community, hey, we did have eyes on it, we did see it, please be aware it is their decision, and hopefully that will alleviate some of the confusion that there has been in the past. Any questions? That, you know,
Just to summarize, I think what the problem was, we were issuing letters from the OIM at the same time as safety, and folks were thinking that the OIM was sort of light on discipline, even though the OIM doesn't have a role in discipline, just in making recommendations. And so you've changed the process now, and the first mover is the public safety offices. And in the case that there's a follow-up, your office is going to do that. Is that a fair summary?
Yes and no. So the first part is correct. That led to confusion. The confusion is that they weren't getting the letter from the departments. They were getting the letter from us. The department's letter was coming from us together with our letter. And that led to the confusion. And, you know, gave the impression that we were somehow involved. We somehow made that decision. Obviously, we are involved in oversight of any complaint, but we don't make the ultimate decision. So because we were sending the letter from law enforcement, and a lot of times it was, you know, the message was lost because we were the messenger. There was belief that we made that decision. And if the decision didn't go the way the citizen felt it should go, they were, I felt they were disillusioned with what our role is in the matter. So I think this separates it. It's cleaner, it's clarified. The departments will send their own letter, and we will send a letter to the community member indicating we did review it, we did have eyes on it, and you will receive a letter from the department letting you know their decision.
Thank you. Questions on that from the board?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, of course, that can lead to its own set of issues, right, Liz? I mean, yeah, the department sends the letter, the community member doesn't like the decision, the department then, after you've told them you have laid eyes on it, why didn't OIM do something about this? I don't agree with it, that sort of thing. So that can lead to, I hear you on the main issue, thinking that you endorsed whatever the decision that Department of Safety came to, but then this could lead to more issues. I'm not saying that, I mean, I think that's inevitable, but maybe we just you need to be prepared for that, I suppose.
Yeah, the letter we're sending is no different than the letter we were sending before.
Right.
And that is natural, right? And we're happy to answer any questions about, a lot of times I think just having a conversation about the procedure explains to the community member how it works and why it's not our decision. And we're happy to do that at any time. And our number's there. We also refer them to who they can talk to in the particular agency with regards to the decision that was made in their case.
What have you done, for example, in the instances where you disagree with the decision? Do you tell the community member?
We cannot. That is a matter of deliberative privilege.
That's what I thought. Yeah. And so you basically tell that to the the community member that you can't get into anything that would be subject to the deliberative process. Yeah. Which will undoubtedly frustrate the community member.
I was gonna say, that's probably
Yeah.
exceedingly frustrating.
Yeah, right. Sorry, can't talk about it.
A classic government,
Yeah, right.
vibe.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Anything else on that, Liz, or any other questions, board members?
Not for me, thank you.
All right, Monarch Castle, do you have anything that is an ongoing investigation or a matter of deliberative privilege that you'd like to review with the board in executive session?
Sorry, I'm trying to do this without the video. We do have a presentation for the board. I don't know if we have enough time or we can do it another time regarding some data.
Okay. Well, having not seen the full presentation, I'll leave it up to you if you feel like we can knock that out in 30 minutes. Otherwise, we can put it on another session.
We'll just put it. Oh, I just got a message. Yes, we can do it for you.
Okay, great. All right. With that, I would like to make a motion to adjourn to executive session. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thanks. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. All right, we will see you in executive session, and thanks everyone for joining the meeting today. It was really interesting, at least for me, and hope folks learned a lot.